So again, this morning, you started off with business as a vehicle for change. We're talking about institutional change right now. And another brother is about to come up, has been, again, Helen, we mentioned Helen who spoke earlier, has a beautiful expression, big heart, strong back. It's that balance between good intentions, but practical change in the world that matters. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. It doesn't materialize. And someone who, when I first met him, he's been in the spiritual spaces, done that inner work, done the grounding, but has also been a deep student of civics, has been a deep student of what Forrest was talking about earlier. How do we make decisions together? How do we do collective decision-making wisely? We're going to hear from Andrew Yang a little later, and he's been talking about one new approach, ranked choice voting, that we'll ask him about. But Open Civics is a very innovative approach to how we can innovate our collective decision-making and collective sense-making, which for those, I never really understood what sense-making is. It's how we make sense of the world. It's how we understand collectively what is actually happening in the world. So before we bring Saul up, I want to welcome a really bright light in the world, Benjamin Life.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. My name is Benjamin Life. I'm a co-founder of a decentralized organization called Open Civics. And it's really beautiful to be able to come back to the Transformative Impact Summit and share what we've been up to over the last year. Because Open Civics has really grown from our conception and founding in 2022 and our official launch in 2023. And so this is how our timeline looks in the abstract, but then this is how things actually go. And so over the last year, since we've opened the doors of membership into our decentralized organization, we have learned a lot and grown a lot. And I want to share some of the things that we've learned over the last year of trying to create a decentralized organization of innovators working on the cutting edge of civic innovation. We have these 5 learnings, these 5 key takeaways that I want to share with all of you. The first is that society runs on systems like computers run software. And if we take a design philosophy approach similar to that of open source software, where we're actually enabling a global effort to redesign our social systems, there's a nonlinear phase change that's possible. And that all of the problems that we currently face with climate change and wealth inequality are ultimately human coordination problems. And so if we embrace this design philosophy of open source software to create new kinds of social systems that enable direct action at the local level, we believe that we could see very fast nonlinear change. And the way that we refer to these systems is as open protocols. Open protocols are modular, transparent, and participatory ways for communities to govern themselves. You can think of these as food system networks or housing cooperative organizations or watershed ecological stewardship bodies. These kinds of social groups run on open protocols, the process by which they self-organize. And when a group is running on an open protocol, instead of functioning as an institution, which is an organization that is holding that function, we create exstitutions. And exstitutional theory proposes that everything that is currently created by institutions can actually be created through peer-to-peer relationships. And so exstitutions run on open protocols. And instead of closed institutions, they're open, bottom-up community organizations that are focused on stewarding the commons and supporting collective well-being. And these kinds of civic systems function more like organisms than like organizations. If we start to take a more ecologically informed approach to the way that we think about how our society is organized, we can actually create new kinds of organizations that support bottom-up consensus and direct action. And instead of having centralized hierarchies, function more in the same way that an ecology might function. And in order to support this process, we started to create an open protocol library. This is a toolkit of toolkits that empowers direct action at the local level. So I want to explain why I believe the future of civic engagement is open. We are currently responding to a meta crisis. This crisis, if you're not familiar with that term, the term meta in that series of phrases represents the self-reinforcing feedback loops that we're stuck inside of. Our current institutions of economy and governance are trapped. And many of us are trying to work from the inside. Some of us are trying to go around these systems. And we believe that if we directly empower the public to create a participatory, resilient, and vital civilization, we can actually bypass that institutional gridlock by using this design philosophy similar to open source software to empower grassroots direct action. And this is a fundamental shift in how our society is organized. At embracing a living systems view, we are able to model our human systems off of living systems and the way in which ecologies self-organize for mutual benefit and create positive feedback loops. So we could also refer to this as life-centric or life-affirming cybernetics, using this philosophy of peer-to-peer software and living systems to create a new kind of social order based on consent and cooperation for mutual benefit. And at the core of this is a shift in culture, a shift in worldview, away from a worldview of rivalrous zero-sum games where one person wins and another loses, towards a world in which we're actually in radical place-based solidarity, realizing that there's no away and there's no other. And each of one of us can thrive only when everyone else is thriving, similar to many indigenous cosmologies of Ubuntu or Sumak Kausai. I am well because you are well. I am because you are. And this kind of place-based solidarity cuts across political ideology and brings us back to our relationship to the immanent quality of life, the things that actually matter, our food, our housing, our water. And if we're starting to design our infrastructures in this way, we take a cosmo-local perspective. We want to nest agency at the hyper-local level. We want infrastructures to be entirely self-governed by the populations that use them. But when we design in that way, we also want to create federations of infrastructures so that the hyper-local connects to the global in patterns of consent and federation. In order to do that, we need new civic systems modeled on this living systems philosophy. And these infrastructures would have to be composable, which means that instead of creating a single platform that has a certain ideology or a worldview baked into that platform, we create tools that are highly configurable by communities to meet their goals and their needs. And these tools will have to be interoperable with each other, so that we're not trying to create a single set of infrastructures, but tools that work together to help communities self-organize. Buckminster Fuller has this quote: if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a new tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking. So if we look at the world around us, we can see how rivalry and separation are baked into the fundamental infrastructures that we use every day. Money is a scarce resource. But if we create systems based on mutual credit that allow for us to merely track the value that is being exchanged, there are tools, direct peer-to-peer mechanisms around currency and infrastructure that allow us to move beyond a worldview of scarcity. And this is why I believe open protocols are so powerful. Open protocols are basically templates. We can think of them as DNA for social organisms, a set of instructions or a packet of information that can be reproduced across contexts, modified and adapted based on the needs of local communities to create new kinds of infrastructures and social structures that help meet the needs of communities. And so that's why we created the Open Civics Network. The Open Civics Network is composed of 3 organizations: the Open Civics Foundation, which provides grants and nonprofit backbone support to the network; the Open Civics Consortium, a non-rivalrous network of innovators working together to create these kinds of infrastructures; and Open Civics Labs, which is our consultancy that is providing direct hands-on support for communities that want to apply these tools locally. And so we believe that the public deserves to have a seat at the table, and that innovators often are designing in silos, and that to break those silos and to put innovation actually in service of the real needs of people on the ground, we've created this innovation spiral, which represents our ethic around how we support local communities directly. And that starts with alignment. We're aligning innovators through this kind of approach to peer-to-peer design. And we're coordinating those innovators. We're funding them. We're collaborating to produce novel outputs. We're creating convenings that gather the public and innovators together to collaborate in hackathons. And we've created an academy to help support the education of the public to how to use these blockchain and peer-to-peer tools directly in place. And so that's how our network structure, our programs are designed to support that innovation spiral. And so, as I mentioned, one of the key outcomes that we're currently working towards is an open protocol library. I have, for the longest time, wanted to create a Clippy for governance, a tool that would allow you to dynamically compose your own community infrastructure, whether that's creating a backyard garden network or creating a housing cooperative, mechanisms that allow you to raise capital together, make decisions together, all in a pattern language that is highly composable so that a community can configure their own infrastructure based on their own needs. We've also had massive success in our on-chain grants program. We've given away $150,000 in cryptocurrency in direct grants to civic innovation projects. And the incredible thing about working with blockchain-based grant making is that we have a highly transparent and highly democratic set of mechanisms that innovators can utilize, where all of the impacts are tracked on-chain, and we're able to allocate those funds based on the collective intelligence of the network that we're part of. How am I doing on time? Great. So I'm going to wrap up now. The last thing I wanted to share is we're also partnering with on-the-ground bioregional organizations to help deploy this kind of infrastructure in place, create commons governance patterns and grant-making apparatuses for regenerators on the ground. And working directly with regenerators gives us the opportunity to test and deploy these infrastructures while also looking for the generalizable patterns so that as we get things right in one bioregion, we're able to scale that into other bioregions around the world. And so up here right now are two different ways that you can engage if this was inspiring to you. If you're a civic innovator, we would love to have you as a member of our consortium. And if you want to follow along or apply some of these tools in your own local communities, the link on the left there will direct you to our community where you can start to plug in and get involved. And then on the right is a link to an unreleased version of our white paper, which we'll be publishing in the next few weeks. That I want to give you all an advance copy of if you want to go deep into this design thinking and the way in which the philosophy of peer-to-peer open source innovation can be applied to social systems. So thank you very much for your time and attention today.
So those of us working to create change, everyone's got their different idea of how and why. You know, global unity, in addition to the 800-person strong community we've built, has got a pretty extensive theory of change. But if you're trying to create change at scale, you better be humble and not assume that your solution is the solution. Otherwise, you're just reenacting colonial mindsets, right? And so one thing I really appreciate, I mean, we opened the institutional change track for those who were here, hearing from Forrest Landry, brilliant philosopher, who one of the primary takeaways was for us to persist and thrive as a species, as a world, as a set of species, we have to get better at making good choices together, the good decision-making collectively. And I appreciate that, you know, you've innovated. I don't want to put you in the same category as those who've innovated new tools, because some people think, you know, this model, holacratic, this and that. But that you're building a library of tools that are, the most important word you said, composable, where communities can choose their own way of making decisions together, but you're creating a library. That for me, and it really is embodied in the open civics, not our approach, Benjamin's theory. And I think there's a sea change that, you know, perhaps has been here for a long time, maybe is more recent in the impact spaces of folks, realizing that colonial mindset of like, oh, I've got the solution, let me go, you know, parachute it in, as opposed to what you're doing, which is more creating an offering. And so I just wanted to honor that, because I think that approach outside of just the civic space is fundamental, and the fact that you're doing it in what in this morning's conversation is the most important arena we can make change, how we make good decisions, wise decisions together. So thank you.
Thank you, Ale.